So what we need to do is to tell people, when you buy this phone, you buy Xbox, you buy Office, you buy Twitter, you buy Facebook. But these things have nothing to do with the phone. But apparently that's the most effective thing they can try and do now.
And in any case, those things are available on every other smartphone that you get as well.
Yeah.
And have been for a long time, long before Windows Phone 7 got released on the streets. Before we close off on the Windows 7, Phone 7 topic, I'll just very briefly say, and I don't know how much of it you've observed, Roy, but from what I've seen of the phone, it's rather bizarre because they have this border. And I don't know whether it was a phone that I was looking at or whether it was badly configured or somebody changed the default settings or what. But it has this border that runs along the top and down the right-hand side. And it takes up about, I don't know, say a centimetre of the screen, not a centimetre, but a sizable portion of the screen with just a black bar. I didn't know whether that was a feature. I saw on the advert very briefly something very similar. And when it was displaying titles, I saw a title saying people, and the word people didn't fit the screen when it was held horizontally. Vertically. And it just didn't seem to fit. It was like the screen was too small for what it wanted to do. And then you had this horrible black border on the right-hand side of the screen. I didn't know whether you'd seen that as well, or maybe this was just a moody phone.
I'm not sure. Did you pass me the picture where you basically see a screenshot of a very unpolished GUI? I've seen people have shown me some proof that the GUI was still kind of in development, even though it was supposed to be a finished product. Was very similar to what happened with the Keen, or when they released the Zune. You know, when they released the Zune, they had problems with the buttons. You know, people would have like the play button not function or something. They had to patch it, you know how, with software. So that tells you it wasn't a physical issue, and I think that the Zune was just like a Toshiba device that used to be like a phone, and they tried to pass it off as like a music player. But they had software issues that were making the buttons not function correctly, and they solved it after a few months using firmware updates and things. But they really frantically kind of pushed these things out because they say, well, if we wait a few more months, there's going to be like bloody, Android 3.5 out. We have no chance. This thing is already rubbish. But how do we market this thing against like Google with the 3D things and the Android and tasks and activities? They're completely behind it, and they couldn't buy, I think, the main two competitors now to them in phones, or the ones to really look up to, are Apple and Google. And both of them are, I think, well, Apple is worth more than Microsoft unless something has changed, and Google is worth almost as much as Microsoft now. So they have no way of actually buying this thing. They have no way of doing anything to them. And especially with phones, and what they would be scared to see now is Windows 7 or 8, or we can call it 20 as far as I can tell. It's just the same. I call it Vista 7 and Vista 8 because it's really just a continuation of what they did between 2005 until 2007. Because, of course, for those who don't know, Microsoft actually worked on developing XP towards what they called Longhorn at the time. It was an absolute disaster, the code spaghetti, and they had to put it all in the trash in 2005 and start all over again, or at least try to reuse some bits of code, and they threw away WinFS and all kinds of things they promised. So since then they had this thing called Vista, and they put on some new desk bar and all kinds of features in there, and they tried to take out the bugs and to improve compatibility with applications. And what they find is because they use the same old code base, and because lots of the talented developers have left Microsoft and don't work on the Windows project anymore, they don't really know how to make things work better, and they cannot really make these things work even well on tablets. How many tablets do you know which still run Windows? I almost assume that they run Android. Whenever I see if it's not an iPad, it's almost always Android now.
Yeah.
So
it's. Well, staying on the subjects very briefly, you mentioned Apple and I've just got a very quick piece of news. We don't normally cover Apple topics here unless they're relevant to the free notes or software world, or there's some sort of connection. But I just want to throw this one in, Roy, and get your opinion on it. PyPad has been released, Python for the iPad. I don't know if you had a chance to look at this at all. I found the press release announcing
I was surprised you. I saw your post about it, and I was surprised you'd cover something about.
Yeah. I was in two minds.
This is the way for Python developers to go into a kind of an Apple mindset and become prisoners almost of the Apple kind of ecosystem. And you know what happens with Apple if you put anything GPL on their shops? They get kind of nervous and very trigger happy. sometimes.
It put me in two minds because I don't have an iPad. I am a supporter, advocate, whatever you'd like to call it, of Python. I think it's fantastic, and I've always championed it. It was nice to see it on yet another platform. I'm not quite sure of the. I was looking at some GUI for. Obviously, because the iPad's the touch screen, and I think I said to you before, and I think you agree, I can't use a touchscreen keyboard, no matter how hard I try. Mm-hmm. I like the angling of a standard solid piece of kit in front of me. But no, it was merely a dimension purely because of the fact that Python is well, I've always thought it's so great.
I never pretended to know Python too well. But this is one of the things that I probably would use beyond. I use it as a script in the command line sometimes, but I don't actually do any hacking on it or any development in Python. And even today, when I program, I mostly work with things like functional programming, and I do some GUIs. And when I do the GUIs, I just work with callback functions and stuff, and I don't deal too much with object-oriented programming these days. But the thing about Python, though, is, did you hear about PyPy?
Yeah, no, that's ringing a bell, and I can't think what I've seen.
They contacted some people in the Mono channel to get some information, and I got in touch with the developer who's behind it, and was trying to approach the Mono people to just very politely say to him, you just be a bit careful, because Mono is co-developed with Microsoft, and it contains code which is developed by Microsoft and has Microsoft license in it. I didn't really think it was safe to have any of the Python project associated in some way with APIs or with function calls to things that are written in C# or in Mono, or with Mono as the framework. But I was quite concerned about that. And I think that the iPad it's really, really, really well marketed. But I've seen, I was on the train a few weeks ago, and this guy just pulls it out. I was using my palm with a full-scale keyboard, and a tactile keyboard. Really, I type on it as fast as you do on the computer. Just writing some blog posts as well. A very small palm, it's very compact. And he pulls out his iPad, like, to kind of show off to me. This guy's 50s or maybe, I think it was his 50s. And him and his friends pulls out his Apple charger, with a big logo, because of course you have to know, if you connect it to the electricity, you have to know this is blessed by Steve Jobs, this is really expensive stuff, so I suppose. And anyway, he pulls it out, and he starts, scrolling around like the screen, showing me like the effects, not showing me, but kind of sitting next to me and doing this thing. And after a while, I kid you not, he just puts it back in. I'm not sure what the hell he was doing. He wasn't even browsing the web. He just puts it back in his bag, and that's it. So I just thought, what has he done? Was he like trying to show he has an iPad or something? And that's all he did.
And that probably is a very good example of how powerful the advertising campaign and the brand name of Apple is. I mean, these things, put aside the fact that they're the pads, whatever you want to call them, but putting aside that the technology, it's a fashion statement. It's like having a new pair of the latest fashion pair of jeans or trainers, and to be able to tap into that market and get people buying technology. And I think a lot of people do, and there might be some people who disagree with me. Yeah. I think a lot of people buy these products purely like they would buy Versace or any other sort of designer brand.
MacBook Air. That was quite a flop, wasn't it?
But it's a fantastic piece of marketing that Apple have managed to do, and you have to take your hat off to them. To be able to make something that's traditionally geeky into something fashionable is one hell of an achievement. And like Apple or hate them, you've got to take your hats off to them for producing this whole image around their product.
Yeah.
It's certainly not. I mean, if you were seen on a laptop sitting in the corner of a room somewhere, tapping away, you might be labelled geeky. Sit with an Apple product with a big shiny logo on display to everybody, and you're seen as as somebody who's trendy, hip, and it's fascinating, really.
Actually, it's interesting because the fashions in society have a lot to do with it, and I think that the fact that in some places or in some era, I suppose people would look at the bad person as the tough person, as the kind of better person. And in some cases, it's things to do with like fashion or being, I don't know. It just reminds me that the Apple culture, it's a bit like those people who have neon lights beneath their car, or have those lights. Back in the 90s, there was this fashion of having those lights in your shoes. They put batteries in the shoes. It's
Oh,
like,
yes.
this is to me. This is like the image when I think of Apple. This is the practicality of it. I mean, he could probably actually press some keys on the screen. I just know it doesn't feel right. But I don't understand why you would. I know some people want iPads, but I think the reason they want that is not because they want to achieve some job on it. Is because they saw somebody having